This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what an attack! Whoa, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
In Carson's fifth year in the league and fifth year working with you, why are you seeing his production and his performance regress?
You know, it's a good question. For us, it's a matter of continuing to work, I think as coaches and players, we continue to strive to get better every single day. I just don't want Carson to feel like he has to make all the plays every single time. I just want him to just be Carson.
The very top of Doug Pederson's press conference, he was asked the question that many people are now asking about Carson Wentz. And even Doug Pederson didn't really have a good answer for that question. And it's a question that we're going to be asking the rest of this year until he proves otherwise about Carson Wentz, the Eagles quarterback. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. The PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. 609-403-0973. Of course, later tonight, we have Monday Night Football on 97.3 ESPN. Saints versus Raiders, the opening of the Death Stars, they're calling it, out there in Vegas for the new Las Vegas Raiders. But no fans will be in attendance, so it's a darn shame. But the Eagles game yesterday, again, leaves everybody confused, frustrated, exasperated, and annoyed. And when Doug Pederson is asked a very valid question about Carson Wentz, he couldn't give you much of an answer except for, well, we're working with him on that. We want Carson Wentz to be himself, etc. And I think part of that is not just coach speak. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are at a point where Doug Pederson genuinely doesn't know what to say anymore. Because I feel the same way. Anyone who's listened to me long enough knows I'm a Carson Wentz guy. I was a Carson Wentz guy in 2016 when he was drafted. I was defending him through the Foles years, all that stuff. And Carson Wentz was the reason why this team went to the playoffs last season. The way he carried and led the team down the stretch in December was the reason they made the postseason. But now that we are in 2020, now that this is September 21st, 2020, and not December 31st, 2019, it's like we're seeing a different quarterback. And at some point, nobody can really answer that question fully except for Wentz. And I know he's just going to give you the typical blasé answer as well. But the moment I saw him throw that interception, he could have run for a first down, but he had to be a hero. He has this stubborn streak now. I don't know where this started. I don't know if it's always been there. I don't know if it's something that is intrinsic into his personality and his mentality. There are reports that Carson Wentz has always been a bit hard-headed with the coaches, that he's always had a bit of pushback in him. But whatever the reason is, Carson Wentz insisted on making that throw. And it wasn't just a bad throw. It wasn't just a bad idea by him. But as Doug Pederson even admitted today, the throw was unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable.
On that particular play, that one's unacceptable. That one is not part of the play. It's a backside progression, obviously, and it's unfortunate. I've got to do a better job offensively. We got to do a better job with plays of that nature, that we coach those a little bit better, and the details of that particular route. It was a little bit of a new concept for us in the game plan this week, and we got to do a better job. But that one's unacceptable.
And I get Doug's trying to take the bullets for his quarterback a little bit. I got to do a better job, blah, blah, blah. Doug, You don't have to do a better job. Carson has to do a better job. These past 2 games are the first time in Carson Wentz's career that he has had multiple interceptions in back-to-back games. And the first time he's thrown 4 interceptions combined in 2 consecutive games since November of 2018. The answer to the question in the press conference about Wentz's regression is yes. And the reason why is because I have no other answer except he's stubborn. Doug and the coaches can say whatever they want. But when I see a quarterback who consistently keeps committing the same mistakes, keeps doing the same thing time and time and time again, at some point, the quarterback is the problem and it's no longer the coaching staff. And I'm not saying it's time to bail on Wentz, but what I am warning all of you is something has to change sooner than later. Because we're not talking about this season anymore. We're talking about Carson Wentz's future, this franchise's future. They invested a lot of draft capital to trade up in 2016 to get Carson Wentz. A draft that walked out with 3 starting quarterbacks in the NFC. Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, and Dak Prescott. And it was like the tale of 2 different worlds yesterday. While the Cowboys were down 29-10 at halftime, they went on to win 40-39 because Dak Prescott led them. Prescott finished with a 72% completion percentage yesterday with 450 passing yards. Meanwhile, Carson Wentz had a 60% completion percentage with 242 passing yards and 2 interceptions. It's inexcusable the way he's playing. And I've heard it numerous times about his mechanics. I've heard numerous times about his decision making. Those are all elements for why he's doing this. But the moment he made that throw to the end zone yesterday, I just sat back and said, and I actually stopped and rewinded just to make sure I saw what I saw. And what I saw was a guy who was more interested in making the big play than the right play. And until Carson Wentz gets back to the quarterback that he was in December of last year and the quarterback that he was in 2017, he will never be more than a guy who puts up some good stats, wins you a game here and there, but he's not going to help you win a championship. And I hate saying that. I absolutely hate saying that because I know this guy can do more. I know this guy can be more. It's utterly exasperating and frustrating. It's like watching Ben Simmons with the Sixers. The guy refuses to get open jump shot. You know he can do it, but he won't do it. And Carson Wentz is the same way. You know he can do it, but he won't do it. And I don't care how wonderful of a human being he is. I don't care about how much charity work he does. I don't care how much of a good teammate he is, how nice human being he is. It's all blah, blah, blah at this point. Your job is to play quarterback, and you're playing quarterback at a level that is on par with another overpaid quarterback right now, and that is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins looks like absolute positive dreck. And that's what Carson Wentz looks like right now. And he shouldn't look like that because he's better than that. He's more talented than that. He has more ability than that. And I don't even know if it's right. Last week, I was hard on Doug and Carson. This week, I'm less hard on Doug and I'm more hard on Carson. When the Eagles have chances, you see him overthrow guys. He has the Donovan McNabb moment where he misses a guy, throws behind him and hits the ground and throws over his head. And this is nothing against McNabb because McNabb had an incredible career with the Philadelphia Eagles. But McNabb, who was also drafted 2nd overall in the NFL draft, was supposed to be even more. And you know what held Donovan back from being even more than he was? Part of it was injuries. And part of Wentz's problem is injuries. But Donovan didn't have the talent that Wentz has had at times. For 1 year, well, a year and like a couple games, he had Terrell Owens. The majority of Donovan's career, he was throwing to James Thrash, Todd Pinkston, and Reggie Brown. The majority of his career, he was throwing to guys like Chad Lewis. Carson Wentz has Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, two of the top 10 tight ends in the NFL. How many times is he not going to look Deshaun Jackson's way? How many times is he going to keep trying to force the ball into places he doesn't need to force it into? How many times is he going to refuse the check down play? How many times is he going to refuse the crossing route? And then Doug Pederson, excuse me. Doug Pederson was asked about quarterbacks and their input on the game plan. And then he says this, and I threw my hands up in the air during Doug's press conference.
As we even in-game make decisions, continuing to have conversations on the sideline, with he and press and myself. What do you like? What are you seeing? What do you want to, what would you like for me to call? Or if I'm not calling something, let me know, then that way I can get it into the game. And just want to make sure that Carson does feel comfortable with the game plan. And, because quite honestly, the quarterbacks have input, right? And, just as Nick had input and all the guys, have input with what we're doing, each week.
So the quarterback has input, and the coach is talking to him on the sidelines during the game, communicating to Press Taylor. They're talking to him about what adjustments can be made. What is Wentz saying to these guys? What is the baloney that Wentz is turning around and saying to them during the game that is causing these problems? Is he telling them one thing and then doing something else? You're telling me that in the game yesterday, when Wentz threw that interception, and if somebody asked him about it on the sideline, that his answer was satisfactory? You're telling me that at points in that game where you were having success running the ball, when you had the one play where Rager came across the formation in motion, and it was a great play, and they threw the ball to him, that Carson didn't turn to them and say, let's run that again? Because if he's not saying that, then I got a problem. There are moments in the game where a game is won and lost. And when the Eagles got that fumble recovery, I thought, all right, here comes the momentum. They're going to turn this game around. And then the rest of the game, it was interceptions and 3-and-outs and Wentz sloppy footwork and overthrowing, underthrowing, throwing behind guys. You can complain all you want about the defense at 609-403-0973, and it's justified. You can complain all you want on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board at 609-403-0973 about Doug Pederson and about the personnel in the field and about all kinds of things. But the ultimate problem yesterday's game was also the reason they lost the game the week before to Washington. Carson Wentz is stubborn. Carson Wentz refuses to evolve. And Carson Wentz is now being outpaced by both of his contemporaries from the 2016 draft. Prescott and Goff both look like way better quarterbacks in 2020, while Carson Wentz looks like a lesser version of himself, aside from a handful of plays here and there. And I'm not saying trade Wentz right now, get rid of him. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is something has to be done. Because if he keeps performing like this, maybe it isn't too crazy to think about what a future in Philadelphia looks like without Carson Wentz in an Eagles uniform. Because his play is just unacceptable. And if he's unopened the coaching, if he won't hear Pederson and anybody else in his ear giving him advice, and if he's not noticing on tape the mistakes he is making, that the regular person like you and me and others can see on television that he's making, and he doesn't understand the same things that we are talking about, and our jobs are not 24/7 football, then maybe his football IQ isn't as high as we all were led to think. This is Game Night. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Still to come, we will recap the NFL and college football weekends, as it was a wild weekend in sports. Plus, how about that Lakers game last night? Anthony Davis hits the three, screams Kobe. It was an incredible weekend in sports. Now, if the Phillies could just stop being a bunch of failures at playing the game of baseball, we actually might have something more to cheer about in this city, as the Phillies are right now playing a miserable Nationals team, and they have a chance to make the playoffs. And, well, let's just say I don't have a ton of confidence in that happening. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. Game Night is being brought to you by SHM Financial. Are you quickly approaching retirement, or are you currently in retirement? Don't get overwhelmed. Contact SHM Financial now. Give them a call at 800-MONEY-SHM or visit them online at shmfinancial.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
I see his work ethic during the week. One way to get out of it is you just got to continue to stay aggressive, right? Stay on the attack. And I don't want anybody to go into a shell. That's no way to approach our business, our craft, our jobs. And I for sure don't want the quarterback position, in this case Carson, to do that as well. So we just got to stay on the attack. We got to continue to work. So I'm not concerned with that at all.
That's Doug Pederson on why he's not concerned about Carson Wentz. He sees his work ethic. He doesn't want to go into a shell. Again, Doug's trying to defend his quarterback. But before we get to Texas, 609-403-0973. Think about it this way. Carson Wentz claims his idol is Brett Favre. Nobody knows Brett Favre professionally better than Doug Pederson because of all the years he played with Favre. You're telling me that when Pederson sees things that Carson does, that he can't just turn to him some point and say, you know what, Carson, you know who would never make that throw? Brett. And just get his reaction. I'm just saying that there are, and listen, I was a huge Brett Favre fan when I was younger, all right? But also, I am older than Carson Wentz. So I remember more clearly Brett Favre's career than Wentz does. And I think sometimes Wentz only remembers the highlights of Favre's career and doesn't remember the other parts of his career. Like some of the bad games that Brett had. And he admitted that he had to be better. And the next game, what does Brett do? He's not just throwing bombs down the field every play. He does have checkdowns. He did have receivers he could throw underneath too. Whether that was a running back like a Dorsey Levens, whether that was a guy like Antonio Freeman, he had receivers he wasn't always going bombs away to. Just because people like to remember the Javon Walker bomb touchdowns or the Monday Night Football game versus the Raiders doesn't mean that's all that Favre's career was. Favre didn't win all those MVPs just because he was throwing bombs down the field. And I think Wentz gets enamored with the being a superhero and a playmaker at times. I really do think Pederson should just turn to him one day when he sees a play on tape and says, and just bring him in a room with himself, Press Taylor, and the other quarterbacks and turn to Wentz and say, now, you know who never would have made that throw? Brett Favre. Not because Brett Favre is perfect, because Favre had a stupid amount of interceptions, and some of those interceptions were completely his fault when he was trying to jam the ball into places because he just thought he could do it. And by the way, Favre has admitted that he had that problem at times, at many times in the years since he played. But what made Favre different was every time he got his team into a hole, he drugged them out of it. In fact, I would have to go back and check myself, but I feel like half of Brett Favre's comeback wins were after he himself was the reason why the team got from behind in the first place. So Wentz it's one thing to go out there and want to make the big play, but the other time he doesn't always remember the basics of the game of football because he is stubborn. BlazeSugarHouse.com text board is open 609-403-0973. Joey D. and Ventnor chimes in and says, a Wentz baseball comparisons, he wants to hit the double off the wall every throw instead of manufacturing runs. So he's forced the hot route plays instead of the safe 4 to 6 second down completions, Joey D. and Ventnor. That's a good comparison. I think that I would also say that he's turning into a little bit like an Adam Dunn, right? Adam Dunn was homer or strikeout. And Wentz seems to want to constantly go for the big play instead of working his team down the field. And when he was working his team down the field, he throws the ball into the end zone in an interception to a guy who has, 2 total targets this entire year? I know J-Jaw's role is to be a red zone target. That's what his primary weapon of choice was in his role at Stanford. He was a third down conversion possession receiver and an end zone jump for the ball, go get it kind of guy. But you go to that guy when you're closer to the end zone. You don't look for that guy on the back end of a play. The hero ball is just too much with Wentz. It absolutely is. And again, I'm not vindicating the defense. I'm not taking any blame away from the players for being completely inept in handling the misdirection and missing assignments on defense. Rodney McLeod said himself that they planned for this. They prepared for this offense. So that's why it's actually extra incredible that, guess what? He and his teammates got fooled by it time and time and time again. Amazing, isn't it? And very frustrating. But you know what? The Rams offense is really good. And not that Hard Knocks is a reflection of reality at all times, but when I was watching Hard Knocks this year, my initial reaction is the Rams offense this good, or is Hard Knocks cutting up the video to make it look that good? That was honestly my question when I was watching Hard Knocks, because I looked at the Chargers and I said, it's Tyrod Taylor. All right, I'm not getting too excited. But watching the McVay offense in those practices, watching Jared Goff go out there, I was like, wow, these guys actually look really good. And then the game against the Cowboys, you saw that, the plays that Goff would get the ball out of his hands quickly and make those big throws and big pass plays. And I'm thinking, all right, this Rams offense is really good. So the fact that the Rams ran up and down on you, it's frustrating. They should have made adjustments. They didn't. But I'm not completely blown away, shocked by it. What I am blown away, shocked by is that this Eagles offense again and again and again finds ways to underwhelm. Doug Pederson's an offensive-minded guy, right? Carson Wentz is supposed to be this super intelligent quarterback, right? Think about the Eagles offense. The year they won the Super Bowl, they were third in the NFL in points per game. And they were a really good offense. They were balanced. Since then, 22.9 points in 2018, 24.1 points in 2019. Both those are outside of top 10, by the way, in the NFL. Right now, over the last 2 games, Eagles are averaging 18 points per game. That's 27th in the NFL. You're telling me an offense with a Super Bowl winning head coach, a second overall pick who's supposed to be one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, a deep threat weapon in Deshaun Jackson, 2 of the best tight ends in the NFL in Ertz and Goddard, a Pro Bowl center, an all-pro returning the right tackle. You're telling me this team with everything I just named, and that's the team averaging 18 points per game. That's completely and utterly unacceptable. So, yeah, I'm frustrated with the defense, but I'm more frustrated with the offense. 609-403-0973. Nick from Brigantine chimes in and says, I don't think Wentz's head and or football smarts isn't in the game. Well, look, you don't get drafted that high if you don't have some sort of football intelligence. I'm not denying Wentz's intelligence or his ability as a football player. I think that to deny that would be ridiculous. He is talented. He is good. But that's what makes it frustrating. What makes it frustrating is that you have this ability and you're not executing. So even if his ability isn't 100%, we've seen quarterbacks come back numerous times. I saw somebody comment earlier today. I don't remember when exactly, at some point today, but somebody texted in to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill and Hunter Brody about Carson Palmer. Well, Carson Palmer had a comeback. He had a point in time where he had a resurgence when he came back from the injuries that he had. And he was playing at a high level. He wasn't an MVP per se, but he was pretty darn close to it. And he almost got the Cardinals back to the Super Bowl at one point. So when you bring up the analogies of what Carson Wentz reminds you of with these injuries and how frustrating it is, I understand the tendency to want to, dismiss him and send him down the river. But at the end of the day, Carson Wentz, he's here for a reason. He's talented. He can play the game. But the fact he's so stubborn and refuses to be flexible, it's just mind-boggling. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. Let's get an irrational comment in here on the text board. Mark in EHT says, next year, Schwartz, Pederson, and Wentz will all be off the team. That's from Mark in EHT. Says, go Raiders. Well, first of all, Mark, if you think that all three of those guys are off the team next year, I think you're being completely irrational. Second of all, good for you. You're a Raiders fan. You haven't won anything since, the 80s? If anybody should be worried about their coaching situation, their quarterback situation, it should be you. I mean, John Gruden won a Super Bowl with somebody else's players. It was the Raiders who traded him. And ever since then, they haven't done almost anything except for the 1 year with Del Rio. So, hey, good for you. You're a Raiders fan. But if you think all three of those guys are gone next year, you're completely irrational. 609-403-0973 is the text board. PlaySugarHouse.com text board, 609-403-0973. Texter's annoyed with me. Says, please do your homework. Deshaun Jackson was barely on the forms in the first half. I don't even know what you mean by forms, but okay. This loss is on coaching and defense. Well, first of all, Deshaun Jackson was on the field. I don't know if that's what you meant, but he just wasn't targeted much in the first half. He was more targeted in the second half. If you want to blame the coaching, that's fine. Listen, Pederson didn't do a good job at times because he got away from some of the creativity that we saw work for this team. That screenplay to Rager was incredible. I got excited. I'm like, that's what I want to see. This is what I've been waiting for. Then we didn't see it again. Last night the Patriots went back to the same play multiple times, and that's why they lost the game. Because Belichick got big-headed. He got egotistical. He was like, run the play before, run it again. Run it till they stop us kind of mentality. So if you want to blame the coaching for some of the play calling, I'll give you that. But as Doug Pederson described earlier, and I played the cut, the throw to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was unacceptable, and it was the back end of the play. It wasn't even one of the primary progressions on the play. And so when you look at that play back and you realize that Wentz had other options, or he could have run for the first down, By the way, how many times did we see quarterbacks running for first downs yesterday? I saw a heck of a lot of Pat Mahomes, Russell Westbrook, Cam Newton running for first downs. I'm not saying Wentz is athletic, those guys, but you're telling me that Wentz isn't more athletic or athletic enough to get about a few yards for a first down? Of course he is. So I can't blame coaching for that. Now, you mentioned the inept defense. I mentioned it multiple times on Twitter yesterday, at Josh Hennig on Twitter. The misdirections, they were biting on all of them. They had missed assignments. They missed containment. There were multiple times that the linebackers went the wrong direction. There were multiple times the defensive line got hoodwinked into thinking that the play was going one direction and they ran that direction. On the broadcast, Chris Spielman is telling you things about the Rams offense, about how the linemen line up, about how they're slanted or they're up front when it comes to run play and play action. I can see it at home. And you're telling me you can't figure this thing out? You're telling me that if Higbee scored a TD once, and if he scored it twice, that it's not time to notice the guy running free on the sideline for a touchdown? You got to coach people up. The other teammates got to pick each other up. Guys, it's unacceptable. What are you doing? I think Brandon Graham had one good play yesterday. Fletcher Cox had two good plays. Malik Jackson had one or two good plays. And that was pretty much it. Your premier players on your defense are Slay, Graham, Fletcher Cox, Malik Jackson, and they didn't give you a lot yesterday. I mean, Slay did his job for the most part. He wasn't giving up a bunch of big plays or anything like that. But the problem is that at some point you keep going to the tight end. You got to notice that. So yes, Texter, I'll give you that in that defense. And yes, coaching is a part of that. But if you're denying that Carson Wentz couldn't have dug them out of that hole, I think you're overlooking the situation. Players win games still in the NFL, in all sports. 609-403-0973 is the play. SugarHouse.com text board. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Dan from EHT says, all I say is overreaction Monday. Well, the problem is, Dan, is that it can be overreaction Monday, but it doesn't change what happened any less. It doesn't change the fact that the Wentz interceptions were horrible. It doesn't change the fact that the defense was completely out of position at times and completely hoodwinked by the Rams' misdirection. It doesn't change the fact that Schwartz and Doug Pederson had a bad day at office. It doesn't change the fact that Sean McVay outcoached Pederson and Schwartz and the entire Eagles coaching staff. They had their players, and they themselves were more prepared for this game. So it may be overreaction Monday, Dan from EHT, but it doesn't change what happened in the game. 609-403-0973. What is up with the last 2 minutes of the Dallas game? What is up with the last 2 minutes of the Dallas game is the Atlanta Falcons love to choke away leads in epic fashion, and Dan Quinn is not going to keep his job unless he finds a way to make the postseason this year. That's what happened in the Dallas game because, number one, you have a 29-10 lead, and you can't find a way to keep that lead is, first of all, bad. Then you lose the lead, you get it back, they go for an onside kick, and you had, 5 or 6 guys just stand around and do nothing? Then the Cowboys recovered it. I mean, Jerry Jones, you saw him on the video just losing his mind every 5 seconds that a big play happened. What happened in the last 2 minutes was actually the last 9 minutes of the game, because the last 9 minutes, Dak Prescott became superhero and did what Carson Wentz refuses to do, which was lead his team down the field to get a score. We may be on pace that the best quarterback from the 2016 draft was not the first or second overall pick, that it was the dude drafted in the 4th round. There's a possibility we could be going in that direction. And how insanely frustrating is that? And it's not because it's the Cowboys. It's because we were told that these were the 2 best quarterbacks in the draft. You traded all those draft picks, all those assets to go and get him. And Prescott may be the better quarterback. I cringe saying it. 609-403-0973 on the PlaySugarHouse.com text protector says, wow, if the Eagles were prepared for everything the Rams did, then the Eagles really suck, says the texter. Listen, I don't know if they completely are horrible, but if you can't execute, it doesn't matter who you are, you're not going to win games. The Eagles failed in their execution in that game. Utterly and completely. I'm not saying they can't turn it around. I'm not saying they still can't go 9-7, for example. But these were 2 games that at worst you should have walked out with a 1-1. You should have beat Washington. You had chances to stay in the game versus the Rams. And between Wentz, the defense, and play calling, every level of the game failed the Eagles. But it starts with the quarterback. In my mind, if the quarterback does his job, and then other things fail around him, I can deal with that. 2 times in Wentz's first 4 years in Philadelphia, his receivers were among the worst in the NFL in drops per target. So there were times that Wentz was doing his job, but the receivers weren't doing theirs. But now Wentz isn't doing his job at all. And I have to wonder, at what point does the quarterback got to get his head out of the sand, and does the coaching staff need to put him against the wall and look him dead in the eye and say, Carson, you got to clean it up. We ain't winning nothing around here. PlaySugarHouse.com, text board 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig, this is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, leading you up to Monday Night Football tonight. Saints, Raiders, get all the action coming up tonight on 97.3 ESPN.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Those guys in that locker room are mad. They're upset that we're 0-2 and in this position, but nobody's gonna feel sorry for the Philadelphia Eagles or feel sorry for me, and and I'm gonna come here every day and take your questions, and you may not like the answers, but I don't care, quite frankly. And what I care about is our team, right? And getting our team prepared, to play the Bengals this Sunday.
In NFL history, 12% of teams that have started 0-2 have made it to the postseason since the NFL expanded to 12 teams in 1990. This is the first year there will be 14 teams. So technically their chances of making it, even though they're 0-2, are higher than in years past. I still got to see it. Oh, you can be angry on the locker room all you want, but you got to do something about it. Look at the Boston Celtics. The Celtics were mad. They were screaming at each other, fighting in the locker room in that last game. Guess what? They came out and they won the game. So being angry and being frustrated means a little bit of nothing unless you go out and do something about it. Of course, you can hear all the Eagles action right here on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins this Sunday in the locker room with Billy Schweinman, Hunter Brody at 10 a.m. Then Merrill Reese and Mike Quick on the call for Eagles versus Bengals right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have full coverage all week on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill and Hunter Brody on the website at 97.3ESPN.com. Of course, I'll be joined to talk more Eagles on Wednesday with Dave Weinberg. veteran Eagles writer. Also, ESPN NFL insider Mike Clay will join us on Friday to preview the NFL weekend. Speaking of a football weekend, accountability time for Josh here. The good news is, over the weekend, I did go 6-4 on the picks. Overall, we are 14-5 on the year. So let's review some of these picks. I was completely wrong about the Tulsa-Oklahoma State game. I should have known better, though, because I wrote some notes down about these two teams being familiar with each other. But I misinterpreted the familiarity to be that they could score on each other. No, it's complete opposite. There was almost absolutely no score. At one point, OKC had their third-string quarterback in there. It was completely horrible. So I called the over, didn't hit it all. The primetime game on ABC, which was an awesome game. Miami of Florida versus Louisville. They didn't just hit the over 64.5. They ran past it at 100 miles an hour. But it was also a great game. I think we got to consider Eric King for a Heisman Trophy candidate because everyone talks about Trevor Lawrence. The Eric King, watch out for that name. That kid is just on fire. Navy, despite my chagrin on Saturday, I was going to say that, my gut instinct didn't work out. Well, Navy covered the +8, and they beat Tulane in that game. The came from behind. They were down 24-0. And Pitt versus Syracuse, it should have been a very easy over 49, considering Pitt hit that easily with the other team not scoring at all the week before. But Pitt decided to stop playing offense, and they just forgot to play football for most of the entire second half. So the NFL picks went 3-2. Niners covered the -7. Eagles did not cover the 1.5, obviously, because they had totally imploded, as well as the Vikings. They did not cover the +3. We did hit the over on the Falcons-Cowboys, 52.5, and the over on the Lions-Packers, 49.5. And then the other pick we hit on this weekend, I gave it to you on Saturday, Kobe Covington. The odds were high if you would have bet him to win by TKO, knockout, submission, or DQ. Well, that hit. So another UFC pick pays off in the long run. So a little accountability on a Monday after a long sports weekend. Josh Hennig here, Game Night on 97.3 ESPN each night from 6 to 7. Don't forget 97.3 ESPN.com. We'll get into more of this tomorrow. The Sixers are down to 3 candidates. Just 3, looks like, according to reports. Go find out who those candidates are. I'll give you a hint. Only one of them has NBA championship experience. Only one. The other 2 have never even coached in an NBA Finals. But I digress. Go check out the article right now at 97.3 ESPN.com or the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Coming up tonight, Monday Night Football, Saints, Raiders, right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm very intrigued to see what the Saints look like outside of New Orleans and this new Raiders stadium. It's going to be fascinating to hear and watch.